I think we stopped over here, right? So right. So as I mentioned, like last week, I said like what is a function? So function, it's a common across all programming language. So there is no restrictions in Python as well. Okay, so there is no restrictions in Python as well because we should have um, so we should have the basic function. If for example, okay, so the basic function, what's the purpose of the function? So for example, if you want to do a set of actions in some set of actions might be like it required more than once in your application, right? So for example, if you're writing a code to do some manipulations or to do some calculation, or it could be like some kind of a set of actions means, so what they will do, we used to write the some set of code. For example, I'm giving some sort of example here. Okay, if I want to call the function, if I have a function a is equal to simple statement. Okay, so just simple I'm making a plus b is equal to z. C is equal to a plus b, and c d is equal to a to the power of us. Okay, c and d. See, for example, this is a simple formula. For example, I'm saying so simple formula. If I want to do this calculation in most of the area in my application means, so what I will do, instead of writing a small set of functions, it could be just three lines, but in real time scenario, you might end up with few lines, more than 10 lines or 15 lines or 20 lines, it could be something like that. So in that case, if you want to do this specific set of action, we want to create as a function and put it in some set of block. Okay, so that's the reason actually in the last class I think I've given us some syntax, sample syntax, how we are doing this. Okay, so here the function name, and if you have any parameter we can set that, and it's a semicolon for um, perspective of what is that, your your Python. So this is going to be indentation. As I mentioned, I think I showed some example as well. I remember. Okay. So you're defining this, the function underscore add and power, just for naming convention. That I'll talk about the programming, the standards and the other perspective we'll explain later, not now. Okay. So here I'm giving a function name add underscore power, so that it's going to be, I'm making a comma b here, right? So I'm passing the value to a and b, and then I'm doing the addition of a and b, and then I'm doing the a to the power of, so c to the power of 2, making a square of that value, and assigning the value here. The same way you can write the code set of functions, and wherever you require, so you can just call this function and you can pass the value. Okay, so you can pass the value, so outside of the function. Okay, we'll see the sample program so that you can understand that. So these values xy is xy might be like you can get the input from outside. Okay, so input of x is equal to, these are very basic guys. Okay, so don't much just concentrate on that, like actually you try to understand the basic things. Sometime without knowing basics, if you go the high level, then really you're confused. Okay, so I'll give the some of the tricks as well, like during the interview, if you're going for any other data science specific interview or any other programming specific interview, there might be the questions, what how they displayed or how they ask you to write a code on this part. There are so many tools are there. The tools will get the value, immediately give the answers for you, like they will evaluate your programming skills. Okay, so in some certain age, if certain places you are getting, you are having the like input x and y, and that going to be passed into the value called function add power, and these two values will go up, and then I think you know this one, right? Yeah. So ultimately, this value go to A and the Y value is going to B, right? So then the AB will receive the value and it make the sense and probably here some value. So you can have a print, let's say here print, print of D. Okay. So when I call this function, what will happen? The entire function will go ahead. The same way if I have a number of functions I'm calling for the purpose. So just this 3-4 lines will enough to do all the calculation in my page. So the big calculations and big calculation and other any other specific set of jobs in a real-time scenario, what they will do, they'll define as a function. And one step headed to that is very important, guys. That's the reason I'm insisting you guys now. See, it's a good practice and code reusability. That's a very important. We used to call out as a code reusability. So for example, if you next to say things going to be a class function class. So this is the class is higher than your the functions. Okay. So if you have a simple one line one page file program, probably you can create a function, you can play around that, and it's very simple, straightforward. But if you're going developing the big applications, so you definitely you have to create a class files and you have to import that class file object, creating the objects, everything, and you have to play around that object. That's the OOPS concept. That's very important. I will teach later. Okay. So this is a simple function. You are calling the function, and this is calling function. This is a called function um, in standard way of C programming. Okay, that's a very important thing, right? Okay, all right. So you have user-defined functions. As I mentioned, the functions defined by the users themselves, what we have written, and then built-in functions. I think last week we have gone through this so many functions, string functions, mathematical functions, so many things. So probably you can explore the other functions which is available in Python, but don't go into the very deeper because most of the functions not required in real-time scenario. But try to understand like or let's say date function. Most of the date function is used to like what is that, adding the date or find the difference between the dates, or sometimes it's going to be a change the date format into American model or British model, or there are other date formats are there. Just explore yourself, that's very important. Okay. And lambda function actually we couldn't see in C other programmings, but in Scala and and Python kind of programming nowadays we have a lambda functions, the function that anonymous and unnamed functions. It's like there is no name functions. I can compare this one. I'm not sure you guys are familiar with um, um, the condition in within the if condition itself. Like you can do the you can write a some program. So in C program itself, if condition true or false. So it's similar to that statement. I couldn't remember that. But in C programming, I'm not sure how many of well versed in that. So in the C programming, so what they will do, they will write the conditions in some set of functions. We can call it as a function kind of stuff. So the lambda function similar to that. So they used to have the condition here, and if the condition is true, then they will execute some set of statement over here. Okay. So they will use a set of statement. The same way for if the condition is false, they'll go with some set of statement. So this is how they used to use the some I forgot the name in C programming, but the lambda function is very similar to this one. Okay, forgot about the if condition. It might be assigned to some value. Okay, so what they will do, they used to do this self the condition. If the condition is satisfied, they can do that. The same way here, some set of conditions like this. So that is something about lambda, but the very major functions we can implement by using lambda functions and recursive functions. Recursive functions For example, if you want the functions call that calls itself as a recursive functions, the name it's also um, giving the direction, right? So any one of you heard about like a recursive function in C programming? Any idea? You must do that. If you're done, if you're done the C programming, there might be recursive functions. Did you guys have worked on that? Anyone?
Yes, sir.
What does it do? Tell me.
Sir, it simply calls itself, sir. Within that function, we call the same. And
Mm.
if you want to do anything repeatedly,
Mm.
like, sir,
Okay. Thank you. That is enough. That is enough. Okay. Cool. So if this is going to be a plus b, and then I have d is equal to some values of this one a of c comma d, let's say. So this is a function, and I'm calling the function outside outside this function. Okay, these are basic things. That's what I mentioned last class. If it is going to be um, if it is going to be any programming a, okay, call function is equal to add 5 comma 4. Okay, so if I call this function, what will happen? Print of C, okay, right? So if I'm calling this function, what will happen? The function will call, the function will call, this function will pass the value to this main function, and then the two value goes to inside this function, and then it will sum up, and then like it make like a c to the power of 2, and then I have a function. Okay, sorry, I missed it here. Add, okay, yeah, add, then the value of c and value of call itself, and then finally we'll get the value. Okay, so this kind of like a recursive functions we used to do that, but in real time scenario very less opportunities like we used to do this the recursive function. But in some typical scenario, probably I think we might use that. That is nothing but your recursive function. Okay, good. So the recursive function is another one. So that's what actually simply represented the input to your giving function, outputs is nothing big deal here. Okay, so that's what
sir,
actually, yeah.
sir, I think instead of you using loops, we can use the recursive functions
Exactly,
like for
exactly. So inside, if you want not kind of loop, you can say in other way, like around. If you want to do multiple things, like for example, factorial number. Actually, the universal, the best example for recursive function. So I used to write the recursive function to finding the factorial by using recursive functions.
yes, sir.
Okay, so mostly like do the recursive functions. For example, factorial means what? If what is a factorial of 5? You guys know, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So that's very important thing. The same way you can do that. So 1 plus 1 into 2, and again 1 into 2 into 3, and something like that, right? So you can write those kind of calculations. You can have the recursive function. Recursive function best example to write the factorial numbers, but not only for factorial, but it depends on the situation. Okay, and you want to understand the variable I mentioned, like the global declared and locally declared. Okay, so I don't know go in detail in that because we are running out of time now. Okay, and there are some set of Python keywords are there. So you shouldn't use those say a word for your variables. I think you know, right, what is variable and all, right? So when we're writing the code, you should avoid all these, the keywords you should avoid, like a false, none, true, and as, set, a break. This is common, guys, actually, not only for Python. If you go any programming language, all the programming language is going to have its own the keywords and set of the things what we have discussed so far. Okay, and then the same way, commenting the code comments. So while you're writing the program, you have to give the comments on the each and every line, not each and every line, basically for some key lines or functions or classes. If you're going to start any other methods, you can give the comments. That's very, very important. So here we have single line, um, single line command. If you put the ash symbol, then the code will become the green, and sometimes it's going to be an ash color. So not in green, it's going to be ash color, so that you couldn't the code will not execute. And the same way, here you can have like the three codes, so that the complete entire the line, the bunch of line going to be disabled. It means like it's going to be commented, not disabled, it's a commented. So these are the very important thing when you're doing the code. Your code supposed to have best practices, like the comment for proper comment and the proper naming convention. So I'll pick up this one. Just note it down, someone. So because actually this is a busy schedule, I think I may forgot like so capturing all those. So this is a basic thing, not related to the data science. It's a common across all languages. The best practices how to write the code. That's very important. Okay, right. So now we jumped into the object-oriented programming, right? So it's a very, very important. And when once the application, sorry, once the any programming which supports object-oriented um, object-oriented support, means then then the specific language become robust. Robust means you can write any kind of programming by using a language. So if you take a C++, C is not a program. That's a object-oriented programming, because there was a limitations when it's not built by the team. Okay, so that time actually they stopped. It was invented more than 45 years, I guess. Okay, C programming. So by the time when they've invented it, it's the limitations until structures. I don't know whether how many of you familiar with the C programming. So they stopped until the structures and pointers and file concept, something like that. But after that, what happened, when they developed the object-oriented programming, they come up with the very nice features like the inheritance, overloading, overriding, and private members, public members, etc., 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 etc. Okay, there are so many things they are come up with the under the object-oriented programming. It's a very interesting. Okay, so I don't know how many of you